I'm going to go to Mr. Caputo. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always a pleasure to speak both in the House of Commons and at committee. Before I came to Parliament, I didn't actually realize how important these committee meetings can be. So it is appreciated, and I want to pick up on what Mr. Cooper had to say. So much of this is intertwined. Relationships with Liberals who have relationships with other Liberals. And there's one common denominator. Do you know what that is? People getting rich off the government. It's true. Oh, it's true. It's true. Mr. Chair, when we think about this, you've got somebody that is already insanely wealthy. I'm not sure if anybody here knows Mark Carney's net worth. I certainly don't, but I can guarantee it's probably a lot higher than mine. Probably higher than every single person in this room combined. And here he is advising a prime minister, a Liberal party, a party entitled to its entitlements, and really defining the hubris that goes along with that. People who, they just don't have enough. People are lining up at food banks in my riding. They're having trouble paying their bills. And yet we have Liberals getting richer and richer. I know it's not in the motion, so I won't speak on it long. But just today, I will be heading to the House of Commons shortly on the Green Slush Fund. What is that about? Liberals helping Liberals get richer. We need to get to the bottom of the conflicts of interest. It's bad enough that it's gotten this far. Frankly, I would love to hear from Mr. Carney what he's thinking. Just from an interest point of view, this is somebody who wants to be prime minister. He's made no secret of that. And yet, here he is advising the government where he not only has a material interest. Typically, the appearance of an interest is enough. I think most people would know, especially, as lawyers, we have it drilled into us. But I think every parliamentarian is taught or should be taught that where there is an appearance of a conflict, then you've got a de facto conflict. And by that, I mean you proceed as though there's a conflict, even if there isn't one, but there could be one. Just the appearance is enough to say, Kate, that's too much, that's enough. Just the appearance. And yet, as Mr. Barrett and Mr. Cooper so eloquently laid out, you've got not only the appearance, but what appears to be fairly tangible evidence of a conflict in that somebody is advising the government at the same time as negotiating contracts that would personally benefit him. Now, that is the very definition of a conflict of interest. Somebody could benefit based on their relationships. That itself is inherently problematic. This is Canada. Our leader, Pierre Poilievre, often talks about that, the have-nots versus the have-yachts. Well, I know where the have-yachts are, and it seems to be at the Liberal convention. It seems to be at the Green Slush Fund, where we're talking about how do we get more? Who's going to get more? You want more? How much more? 1 million, 2 million, 5 million? People are lined up at food banks. People can't afford their rent. There aren't enough houses for people to buy. And yet we have Liberals lining up to line their own pockets. And at the Ethics Committee, if there is one place where we are to address it, it should be here.
Absolutely.
That is why I am puzzled as to why the Liberals here do not want Mr. Carney in that chair. What are they so afraid of? I mean, the conflict of interest is so clear. I'm sure he's very bright. I'm sure he will tell us all about it if the Liberals agree to have him come, perhaps if this committee overrules them and decides that it is the right thing. But if I was the Liberals, I would be saying, I want this. Why do I want it? Because I want to show, you know what, there might be smoke, but there's no fire, even though we know there is, because it is at the very least the optics of a conflict. But when we have friends of rich Liberals who are now advising the Prime Minister while themselves negotiating and getting, what, $2.5 billion contracts? This is so obviously a conflict of interest that I don't know what more could be the case. So what do we need? We need Mr. Carney there, sitting in that seat. It sure is lonely right now. It's an empty seat. Let's have him there for a couple of hours, and he can tell us about this. You know, these other people that Mr. Barrett mentioned, Mr. Top, Mr. Guy, Ms. Byrne, none of them want to be Prime Minister. None of them want to be Prime Minister. None of them are negotiating contracts with the Liberal government. None of their friends, as far as we know, stand to or are in the process of getting rich from the government. And this is a government that promised to be open by default, which is kind of ironic because right now they're fighting a speaker's ruling about openness in Parliament. So why would we assume that they're doing anything but that here? This isn't transparency, it's opacity. It's opaque, this government. So let's shed some light on it. Let's bring Mr. Carney here. We've agreed that Ms. Byrne should attend. Not sure that they're going to hear very much. After all, she doesn't want to be Prime Minister. Not sure they're going to hear very much again. She's not advising us as a special advisor to skirt conflict of interest rules with the Liberal Party. I mean, the Liberals could really probably just avoid this whole thing at the Ethics Committee just by having Mr. Carney subject to conflict of interest rules, or telling us, because they wouldn't tell us this, they would not tell us during question period. This was asked multiple times. Was his involvement with the Liberal Party cleared with the lobbying commissioner? That's pretty simple. Again, this open by default government, transparent by default, everything you want, we will get. They won't even answer a question about lobbying. A yes or no. No, we dropped the ball, but we're doing it. That's what they should say if they haven't. And if they have, then tell us. I'm sure if they had, they would say, yes, it was cleared by the lobbying commissioner. Sometimes you don't like the answer, so they don't ask the question. They certainly didn't like the speaker's ruling on the SDTC. I don't think they're going to like the answer that they would get from the lobbying commissioner, but who knows? I'm sure they'd be more than willing to give up all of the information. There are just so many questions to be answered. There are so many things to be dealt with at this committee. And yet, here we are struggling to get the transparency that we need by getting Mr. Carney right there, seat 17. I would welcome him, shake his hand, pour him a glass of water, and then myself and my Conservative colleagues would be happy to ask a number of tough questions on behalf of Canadians, not for political gain, but because people have the right to know. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.